Goes to the end zone. Oh, what a catch! Devontae Smith. Touchdown, Alabama.
Watch out for Mr. Robinson. This kid is going to be special and is already flashing.
This is Chasing the Natty, a college football fantasy podcast.
All right, welcome in everybody. It is quite late in the evening. I appreciate y'all all coming in. And yeah, we're back with another episode of Chasing the Natty, a college football fantasy podcast. I am your host, who is in desperate need of a haircut, and aloe, Jared Palmgren. And on the other side of me is the host with the most, Xavier Hood. Xavier, how you doing tonight, man?
Well, we're doing good. Same here with the haircut. It's about the time.
I don't know, but see, this is why you guys need to watch on YouTube, because you'll see that my hair is getting exceptionally long. It's actually behaving pretty well tonight, but...
See, I just threw in a hat. I was like, look, it's been a long day. Let me just throw in the hat.
Oh, yeah, I got you. I was with my family this past weekend for some Easter stuff, and let's just say I was looking at all the pictures that we took, and I look like a mess. I need a haircut desperately. But we're not here to talk about haircuts. We are here to talk about college football fantasy, and we got a lot of good stuff for you guys today. We are going to have a great announcement coming up here in just a second. We're both very excited about it. We're going to go through some transfer portal news with a couple of transfers we want to talk about. We're also going to talk about a little bit the two drafts that Xavier and I took part in recently. We're going to kind of compare and contrast our teams, talk about our different strategies and such. And then from there, we'll be on the bulk of the show, in which we're going to talk about some sleepers, Xavier and I. Just some players that we really think should be out there, people should be talking about. So, Xavier, got anything else you want to add there?
Nah, you got it all down packed.
Sounds good. Yeah. So before we move on to the bulk of the show, y'all make sure you like, subscribe, do all that good jazz that you guys know how to do. If you guys really want to help us out, Apple Podcasts, leave those 5-star reviews. Those are fantastic for getting the word out about us. And I'm just saying, if you leave a 5-star review that includes a question in the review, pretty good chance that question might be answered in a future episode. So we'll see how that goes. That's all I'm saying. So, with all that, let us move on to this big announcement. So, Xavier, if I were to go back to like 6-year-old you, and I told you that you're going to Canton one day, would you be excited?
Oh, man. Man, I wish I had those type of dreams, though. I would have probably been thinking about the Basketball Hall of Fame. That was my first love. But if you told me I was going to Canton, Ohio, oh, man, I'd be immortalized forever. That's historical right there.
Well, we are going to Canton. Unfortunately, we won't be immortalized in the Hall of Fame, but we are going to be a part of the Fantasy Football Expo. It's in Ohio, so I have to add the "V" in front of it. We're both very excited about this. John Loud, the Gridiron Scholar, you can follow him on Twitter at GridironScholar91. He invited us to be a part of this in order to kind of expand our brand, and we are both very, very excited about this. We are going to be part of the Kings Classic League, in which we are going to do a live draft at the Fantasy Expo. We're going to be there. We're going to meet you guys. It's going to be a great time. I'm very excited about it. Xavier, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm excited as well. Definitely a great trip to look forward to. Get to talk shop with a lot of leading experts in the industry. Get to see how there's get some of their knowledge, pick their brains, see how they're drafting, how they're looking at games. Yeah, definitely, it's going to be a great experience, because especially for this isn't our first rodeo with fantasy, but with an experience like this definitely will be able to broaden our scope and maybe get us in some more leagues to where we could just dominate. So great.
What I'm excited about this is that it'll give us a great opportunity to expand just the entire brand of college fantasy football. Because surprisingly, it's like this equation in my head where it's like college football is huge, fantasy football is huge. Why are these two not together like they should be? And to me, this is the perfect opportunity for us to get out there, actually make an opportunity to expand this brand, let people know that this is a thing that is out there and you can get involved in. And you just need to listen to experts like us, and it isn't as hard as you might think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we are both very excited about this. And so, yeah, with that exciting announcement out of the way, we'll go ahead and move on to the 2 mock drafts that we did. And Xavier, I'll go ahead and you're on the right, I'm on the left. I'll let you go ahead and explain your draft first.
Yeah, so me and Jared had 2 completely different drafts, with me being blessed with the first pick and Jared being blessed with the great Mr. Irrelevant pick of the last pick of his draft, respectfully. And with my first pick, I feel like it's just been common knowledge now that Malik Willis is the best fantasy prospect in college football at the moment. So it was just no thought to it at all. And with my draft was a little bit different in the I would say the stats are because it was 5 points per touchdown in a
for passing
PPR.
touchdown. Yes.
So I was like, well, even though Malik Willis is not passing that many touchdowns, it doesn't matter. That man is still getting me a lot of rushing touchdowns along with passing touchdowns. So it doesn't really adjust my skill that much.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely went off of that. And with the first pick, it is nice to have that first pick because you get the best player available, but also you have to wait so long again for your turn. So I'm just sitting there waiting to see, like, all right, should I go running back? Should I go receiver? And so Jared did his draft first, and I didn't see initially, but I was hearing rumblings from him that wide receivers are going early. So I was like, well, maybe I'll get one wide receiver off the board and maybe go running back. But man, that first round, after the first 3 picks, if you see Spencer Rattler gone, Sam Howell, or Bijan Robinson, you're just like, well, quarterbacks and running backs are about to fly off the board, so might as well just stack up a receiver to bulk up that room.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back-to-back receiver because I knew I could still get some good value in running back later on, even though they probably weren't like, maybe top 5 running backs. That I feel like mid-level picks, like the 5th, 6th, 7th picks are usually like a sweet spot in a draft.
Mm-hmm.
But with me being number 1 and having to wait so long, I was like, well, let me just get like as much value as I can out of the way and then like evaluate it as I keep on going down and see how long I can wait on things. So as you can see, I got Traylon Burks out of Arkansas, he had a great season last year, projected to do a lot more this year, especially with KJ Jefferson as his quarterback. We'll see how that turns out, but I'm hearing good things out of camp. Romeo Doubs out of Nevada, great year, number 1 receiver with Carson Strong. So and Cole Turner. That's who I also have, but I'll get to that later. But I knew I could get Kevin Harris. I waited on Kevin Harris, a great South Carolina product. I wasn't turned away by the running back under him. His name eludes me, Jared. You know his name.
Marshawn Lloyd.
Marshawn Lloyd. I wasn't straight away about him returning back because I was like, I feel like Kevin Harris has solidified the amount of reps that he's probably going to get for the season. Like, he solidifies that number 1 back. I understand that Marshawn Lloyd can still come in there and get reps and show flashes, maybe get up, maybe a 100-yard game, maybe some receiving yards, but Kevin Harris has that locks. Then I decided to hop on the Tuggle train with Jared and some other people in the industry after seeing what
it is the tugboat.
The tugboat.
The tugboat.
The tugboat. I am all aboard that ship. I will be the first mate of Demontre Tuggle. I feel like he's a great back. Definitely for a Mac or running back. So I was like, let's get that value there. Even though there were still some good options available, I was like, I feel like for the amount of games that he played, which is only like 5 or 6, if I'm not mistaken.
3
games, and
he played 3 games.
Put up a lot of yards per game. So I was like, I need to hop on this tugboat as soon as I can. And the pick I'm really excited about was Jaden Walley out of Mississippi State. Now, a lot of people are starting to climb up some draft boards now. I watched him all season. Well, I didn't watch him all season, but I heard rumblings. And then after the Mississippi State versus UGA game, I was sold. I said, this kid is special. Then I looked at the stats and I was like, yeah, he's their leading receiver as a freshman. So definitely with him and Will Rogers coming back next season, it's only going to go up from there. Now, I couldn't believe that I could get Jarek Broussard from Colorado in the 7th round. I was like, how did this man slip and fall into my laps? I understood. I was like, I could, go another QB, get a better QB at the time. But I was like, no, I can't pass up on this option. There were some other players I was thinking about, but at that point, I was just taking best available because I just wanted to bolster up my room. Because
I don't blame you
when
one
you're fighting
bit.
with teams that have Isaiah Spiller and Tyler Goodson, and I'm just like, oh man, those gonna be some tough teams and Jalen Berger. I'm just like, all right, you have too much.
I
I
think
have to be able
it
to compete.
I think it personally solidified your starting running back room because you could be wrong about Kevin Harris and Marshawn Lloyd could steal that job for him. We could both be wrong about DeMontre Tuggle, and for some reason he just falls off the map. I don't think you're going to be wrong about Kevin Harris, DeMontre Tuggle, and Jarek Broussard. You will have two solid running backs out of that group. And I think it was absolutely the right decision for you to take Broussard there.
Yeah. And then the next round I had to go QB, and I had the plan of going Michael Penix Jr. because I was like, I like what I'm seeing. I wanted to go next round where I can get Freifogel when I go back to back, but I wasn't able to because I was sniped. As we all know, that it's always like there's always at least one snipe in a draft, or you may see more than one from different teams and different people that are drafting. But I was on the receiving end of that snipe. So I was like, I need a QB. I need somebody reliable. And Miles Brennan started off the season very well before his injury. So I expect to see the same thing. I have a personal love for Max Johnson and what he did to Florida as a Bulldog fan, but also from a college fantasy fan as well, to where I'm just like, you put up more than 200 yards. You seem to be improving. It can only go up from here. So whatever Ed Orgeron decides on who's the starting QB, I'm all for it. But I feel like it's pretty much the consensus from the LSU camp and LSU fans that Miles Brennan probably has that job solidified.
I'll say two things here. First of all, I'm going to laugh at you because you made fun of me for taking Miles Brennan in the 7th round, and then in your draft, you take him in the 8th round, which I don't think there's that much of a difference. But something that'll make you happy. I've actually heard a little bit of rumblings outside of the LSU camp, not necessarily the LSU fan base, but the LSU camp, that Max Johnson is currently getting some runs with the ones right now.
Yeah.
So I know you'll be happy if you get proven right come the fall. So I'm just letting you know that right now.
But also, I didn't draft him, so
that's true. I don't know how much faith you got there.
I'd be running to the waiver wire and be like, "All right, Max Johnson, buying the stock now." I knew it.
Oh yeah. All right.
But, after that, I went Ty Profile, Tion Dillard, another Mac, and then, oh man, I really appreciate this run I had to where I went tight end. I got the best tight end available. That it feels like it's the consensus right now that it's Cole Turner. You can maybe have a discussion or a debate with a few other people that may have people higher, but for what he produced last season, I think he's definitely the number one. He's doing it at a receiver, close to a receiver rate. And then after that, I needed a QB, so I waited my turn and got JT Daniels, which as a Georgia fan and like watching Georgia football religiously and seeing our offense move in the right direction, I think JT Daniels is definitely going to make that leap to where Georgia's going to become not a pass-heavy team, but definitely a more balanced team, like comparable to a Bama or a Florida last year. And then I had to double dip because people were going tight end. It was a nice little tight end run for about 7 picks, but then it started fading away, and I was like, well, Sean Dykes is still on the board. Sean Dykes is not just somebody you just pass on. Like I probably did it out of spite a little bit just so nobody else could have him and be like, oh, you missed out on a great tight end just to show it in your face. But I was like, there's no way I can pass.
I mean, I would probably knock you if you had like a weaker wide receiver room or a weaker running back room, but both of your running back rooms and everything were solid. So I saw no reason not to take Sean Dykes there and just solidify that tight end spot. Because like I said earlier with your running backs and everything, you could be wrong about Cole Turner. You could be wrong about Sean Dykes, but I highly doubt you're going to be wrong about both of them.
Yeah. And then towards the end of the draft, I just a little bit more research. Well, new information came out before I made the TJ Pledger pick that he's not running with the ones, but I still believe for what he did at Oklahoma that eventually I feel like maybe it's more of like he's just not used to the scheme and the system yet. So once he gets acclimated to that, because he has the talent to definitely run with the ones, and I think he could produce at a high rate. Now, what I really want to talk about, where everybody seems to be really high on one Arkansas State wide receiver, and that's Corey Rucker, because he had the amazing game where he had like 9 receptions over 200 or 300 yards.
300 yards.
So that's great and all, but that was if I'm not mistaken, his only big game. Everything else was pretty mediocre.
I think he had another 100-yard game or two down the stretch, but
Okay.
that was the one that everybody like points to. It's like this could be his ceiling.
I just knew Jeff Foreman definitely for the last 3 to 4 games, straight 100-yard games. I was like, you've shown consistency. You seem to, got acclimated with the quarterback and definitely are able to move on to next year. So with Jonathan Adams Jr. Departing for the NFL draft, Corey Rucker and Jeff Foreman seem to be a dynamic duo in the making. I don't think one person is going to, take all the reps like a Jonathan Adams Jr. I think it would be a nice split wide receiver room to which, either one, it could be like an Ohio State situation where you have a Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson where either one can go off for a game, but they're both going to get you a good value at their position.
That's true. And the only thing I would kind of say there is we're still not entirely sure what kind of offense they'll be running because Blake Anderson was fired and has moved on to Utah State, and they hired Butch Jones in his place. And so it could be that, again, I'm not entirely sure what kind of offense Butch Jones is going to run there. I haven't done the research on Arkansas State there, but if you do see less passing attempts, it could hurt both Corey Rucker and Jeff Foreman's fantasy in the future. But also, you got him here in the 15th round, so I'm not going to knock you too much there.
Yeah, and I just look at the personnel. I'm just like, well, Arkansas State doesn't have the greatest running back room in the world anymore. So, yeah, I hope Butch Jones will realize, hey, I have 2 good players here, good playmakers here. I need to use them, and not just follow like an old philosophy of like, let's run the football, which it can work in some leagues, but in some conferences, but things are changing now. Defenses are getting smarter. Offenses are evolving. Hopefully, Butch Jones is on the trend of that. Now, my last pick, which I was surprised because that was the very last pick of my draft, I got Chris Ottman-Bell out of Minnesota. Excuse me for the mispronunciation. But, yeah, with the departure of Rashad Bateman, it just seems like Ottman-Bell, and there's another receiver, his name eludes me at the moment, are poised to be next up. And I feel like the consensus among Minnesota fans and
I think it's Dante Wright. He just transferred in from Texas A&M. I might be confusing here for somebody else, but I think it's Dante Wright.
Yeah, Dante Wright, Dante Wright is at Colorado State, I believe. Or there is a Dante.
No, you're thinking. Who am I thinking of? All right, you keep talking. I'm going to research this real quick.
But Ottman-Bell, Minnesota, definitely it seems to be poised for that number 1. There is a transfer coming in. Was an established receiver. But I remember the Minnesota coach saying that this is the first time he's dealing with a younger receiver core. So at least with Ottman-Bell, he'll have a little bit of experience, but not as much. But Ottman-Bell knows the system, and I feel like he'll be able to thrive in it, knowing what he did from last season.
Dylan Wright is the receiver I'm thinking of. So I wasn't too far off. But you're right. Dante Wright's Colorado State. My bad.
Yeah. Well, now I'll kick it over to Jared and see what he did with his draft, with his situation of being last pick.
So first I'm going to say I'm shocked that Chris Ottman-Bell was the very last pick in your draft. I am shocked at that. Dude is a fantastic receiver. I think he's going to make a big jump this year with Rashad Bateman being with Tyler Johnson, Rashad Bateman, all of them being gone now. I think he's poised to be that next guy. And I think you could absolutely see a major year from him. And I think he's great value at round 16. So let's get to my draft. So first round for me was actually kind of rough because, again, last pick of the first round. And you have a bunch of guys that you're just praying fall to you. And every single guy I was praying would fall to me was taken. I was hoping for somebody like Dustin Crum, Tank Bigsby. I was hoping for, trying to think who else, Keyshawn Butte, David Bell. Somebody had fallen to me at 13. None of those guys I really wanted fell there. But I did still see Ronnie Rivers there at the end of the first round. And to me, I had to go ahead and just pick up a running back that could solidify my room. And that's when I went with Ronnie Rivers. And after that, I'd seen in the first mock draft that wide receivers were going early. And this was like Xavier was alluding to earlier, where it really seems like this year you have to get your wide receivers relatively early because there's a massive drop off in potential from that first tier of wide receivers to the end of your draft. You can find some great value at running back later in the draft that we know of. You can find some great value at quarterback later in the draft that we know will be good value still. However, wide receivers, you're really starting to look and be like, all right, you're a lot more boom and bust later in the draft. So I had to get somebody I knew was going to be good. And so I went with a connection that I knew was already established, and that was Marvin Mims in Oklahoma with Spencer Rattler. And so I just went ahead and got Marvin Mims, and then I waited a year and a half before it came back to me. Xavier knows what I'm talking about, man. When you're on this turn and you're a 13-man league, you wait forever before it's your turn again. Now, it'll be better once these are live drafts, but still, I had to go ahead and get a quarterback because I knew that they were. This was the point where, again, that top tier quarterback, I wanted to grab at least one of them, and Desmond Ridder was sitting there for me, and so I went ahead and grabbed him. And kind of like with the last picks, I wanted to go ahead and solidify my wide receiver room. As you can kind of see, I kind of waited a little bit before I took another wide receiver because I knew how solid these two guys were. And that was Chris Olave out of Ohio State. I actually have an Ohio State friend I've been discussing this a lot with. He's actually sold on Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson being that top guy next year. And I don't doubt that Garrett Wilson's incredibly talented. However, I don't think Chris Olave would have been convinced to come back another year after being projected as a first-round receiver this year in the NFL draft if he wasn't guaranteed that he was going to be getting production this year. I don't think he would have taken that risk. Like, obviously, I'm not going to say he doesn't love Ohio State. He clearly loves Ohio State. But I think there's going to be other things in there that incentivized him to come back for one more year. And I don't think he would come back if he felt like he was going to fade away to people like Garrett Wilson, Smith and Jibba, Julian Fleming, all these other guys. You have thoughts there, Xavier?
I was going to say, I think that speaks to C.J. Stroud's potential as well, to where, you're going from Justin Fields to basically I wouldn't say a true freshman, but this man's barely touched the field of it. He's only come in maybe 2 to 3 times in at the end of games for some games of Ohio State this past season, with them only playing a few games less than every other conference. But I think Chris Olave understand that he still has a good quarterback in his hand that's going to get him the ball and get him at a high rate, and that he can still produce what he's been producing or even at a better rate. So I think either way, it would have been good. Garrett Wilson to Chris Olave. I think the safe pick was definitely Chris Olave, because even if Garrett Wilson is that number one, Chris Olave is still going to get you a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns. It'll probably be like an Alabama situation of I have Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle. You can't go wrong with that. Or somebody's going to go have a really good day, and the other person's going to be like, well, I had 100 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
It's just pick your poison at Ohio State right now.
All right, I'll try to get through these next few ones a little bit quicker. DeMontre Tuggle, we already talked about him. I'm captain of the tugboat. I'll see you guys out on the water. Rashad White, he's a volume guy. I think he's going to be paired with Jaden Daniels and everything. I think he's going to go off this next season. Now, he's also got a Trey Unum. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'll have to look at it again, but he's at running back 2 there at Arizona State. But I think Rashad White did enough to establish himself as that first back out on the field to where I felt comfortable taking him in the 6th round. Miles Brennan, we kind of already talked about him a little bit. I made fun of you for that. I went ahead and got my 3rd wide receiver here, Eric Ezukanma. He was somebody. What was that?
I was like, how did he fall that late to me?
Well, did he fall that late for you in your draft as well? Because again, I was surprised that people weren't really looking at him.
He went 5th round for me.
Okay. Because I remember he went pretty later in the first mock draft. I haven't looked too deeply at the 4th draft they just put out to see where he's gone there. But yeah, 8th round here, I was looking to solidify my starting core of wide receivers. And to me, Ezukanma, pretty much his last man standing there at Texas Tech. Because so many of the other guys, Keyshawn Carter, Jalen Polk, all these other guys just transferred out. So I'm like, all right, Eric Ezukanma, all right, seems like you're the number 1 guy. And especially if Tyler Shuck does take that starting job, I see Ezukanma's draft stock going way up. My first backup quarterback was Casey Thompson. I'm feeling less and less confident in that pick lately because I've been hearing more news that Hudson Card is getting snaps with the starting with the start with try again, Jared. Hudson Card is getting snaps with the starters at Texas. And so I was pretty confident Casey Thompson going into spring camp that he would end up being the starter. I still think he can be, but I'm less sure about it now, and I probably would have waited a little bit longer before grabbing him. But then again, if I'm right here and Casey Thompson is the quarterback one at Texas, I got the quarterback one at Texas. I don't think I can go wrong with that, especially with the Steve Sarkisian offense.
Sarkisian offense.
Yeah. Next up, I double dipped Texas. I got my guy of the wide receivers at Texas. That's Joshua Moore. I know a lot of other people are talking about Omire. There's some other guys that are some other freshmen and not freshmen, but freshmen last year that people expect to take a big step forward this year. I think Joshua Moore is that kind of solidified guy that's going to provide that kind of captain of the wide receiver core. So I went with him. Traylon Smith was somebody I was surprised fell this late. And I talked to people like when we were doing the draft, I was like, hey guys, what's the hesitation here? And so a lot of people are worried that a lot of his data from last year came from that Missouri game where he just went off. And granted, I'll give him that. A lot of his production did come out of that game. However, they also brought up the fact that there's some freshman running backs coming in this year that they're a little worried about. And I don't think so. Or from what I'm hearing in camp, Traylon Smith still is that number one guy. I believe in the scrimmage, it was reported he got about 69 yards. Nice. And a single touchdown. And so it seems to me he's still that premier back. Like he's still that number one back. And it seemed like on the secondary team, they were kind of switching back and forth between some backups. But Traylon Smith got all the carries on the first team. 12th round here. This is the beginning of the, or this was a little bit later on the tight end run. I waited. I believe my tight end run started in the 10th or 11th round. I waited a little bit because I was not going to start that tight end run. I want to see how late it went. I just went up and picked the best tight end available that was left at that point. That was Isaac Rex out of BYU. I like him a lot. We'll get into some reasons why later. I'm less confident in him now than I was back when I did this draft. However, I still think I got a great tight end pick here. Jaden Daniels solidifying that quarterback room. I would say Xavier's giving me applause over there. If you can't see on the podcast, he's giving me a little clap, clap, clap. Xavier loved that pick when I got him that late.
Absolutely. I think with Coach Herman, Jaden Daniels Coach Herman raved about Jaden Daniels. I remember seeing him.
Herm Edwards, you mean, not Tom.
I don't know why I'm thinking about Tom Herman. That knows. Herm Edwards, raves about Jaden Daniels, talks about his potential. I was a little bit hesitant in the beginning because I remember his freshman season, but he came in and obliterated Oregon. It was a great game because that was the game where Brandon Ayuk was playing, and he just torched that Oregon secondary. Now, I'm not going to put that all on Ayuk because Jaden Daniels still has to get him the ball, and Jaden Daniels is doing a good job with Arizona State. They have good wide receivers. And Jared will talk a little bit more about that. Well, I thought you drafted one of the wide receivers, but I guess I'm mistaken.
No, there was one that I was made aware of in my draft, and that was LV Bunkley Shelton.
Yeah.
Who I found some camp tape on him, and this guy's talented. And if I could have gotten him this late, I probably would have. Like, dude is very, very talented.
Yeah. And I wouldn't look too much at the Jaden Daniels stats from last season, this past season, because it's COVID season. Things happen. Pac-12 didn't have that many games. Cancellations happen.
Well, to me, I mean, you can't totally ignore this last season because I think this last season. Well, hear me out here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying this in a bad way. Like, I clearly I still like Jaden Daniels. I'm surprised he fell to 13 here. But to me, last year solidified his use of his legs. Like, look at his rushing numbers from last year compared to his passing numbers. Like, they clearly know how to use his legs when they need to. And combine that with the rushing attack they have, you're probably looking like at a Russell Wilson situation over in Seattle, where the legs of the QB is going to open up lanes for the running game, and the running game in turn is going to open up lanes for Jaden Daniels to be able to use his legs. So I like the upside of Jaden Daniels based on what I was seeing last year, even if he wasn't passing as much. However, we both know that rushing for a QB is going to get you a lot more points than passing.
Yeah. So you might have a little Malik Willis light, per se. I think that's the upside for Jaden Daniels, especially in a Pac-12 conference where points, it's just outscore the other team.
I agree. To finish up here, Braylon Sanders out of Ole Miss. He's kind of my guy on the Ole Miss offense. a lot of people are looking at Ja'Cour Pearson, and from camp notes, I'm hearing that Ja'Cour Pearson is that guy. He is very, very good, and I'm on the side now where I probably would draft Ja'Cour Pearson over Braylon Sanders because Ja'Cour Pearson's apparently taking over the role that Elijah Moore had last year, and if you know anything about what Elijah Moore did last year, Ja'Cour Pearson could very well be a top-tier wide receiver in fantasy next year. But however, I want Braylon Sanders because to me, he was that guy kind of showing at the end of the year after Elijah Moore kind of opted out at the end of the season. They could take over that number one receiver role. And I'm always a bit err on the cautious side of I'll go with the veterans who are there with the program over the new transfers, at least in the beginning until I start hearing notes out of camp. And now I'm starting to hear notes out of camp that Ja'Cour Pearson could take over that number one wide receiver role.
Yeah, especially from, I would per se a weaker division because Ja'Cour Pearson came out of Western Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken. So
yes, sir.
Going from, oh man, you're gonna have to tell me the conference. I almost forgot.
TUSA.
Yeah, TUSA. So CSA. So you're going to the SEC, and that's going to be a big jump. I mean, sometimes these players can because of their athletic ability, but sometimes it's just a whole different world, making it basically go into a higher division, basically. So yeah, it's good thing. It's good to hear things at a camp about Ja'Cour Pearson, but Braylon Sanders has definitely been in the SEC. He's battle tested, so I wouldn't count him out just yet, but I like you said, I did hear some things at a camp, good things that he has some great attributes to him. So we'll see.
Yep. Finish up here. So Jalen Mitchell out of Louisville, running back. So again, I'm shocked that he's going this late. If I hadn't taken him here, I probably would have included him on my list of sleepers here today because this man, after Xavier Hawkins opted out mid-season last year, finished the season with 3 straight 100-yard games. Dude clearly can take over that workload that Xavier Hawkins left behind. I think Louisville has learned to trust him. And so I'm shocked that he went this late. And I think because of that, I think I had one of the best running back cores in the draft that I had. And we're not going to go too deep onto like what everybody else did, but my personal opinion is I thought I did a great job with running back here. And then my last pick, this was before the George Pickens news. I'll point that out. That's why he went even this late. Like you're not going to get Jermaine Burton this late now because of the unfortunate news with George Pickens and his ACL tear. But I just wanted a Georgia player on my team, and it was my last pick. And I'm like, I'm going to go with the guy with high upside, and that's Jermaine Burton. And well, not a week or two later, you had George Pickens unfortunately go down with an ACL tear, and then Jermaine Burton's injured now as well, but he's supposed to be back in a couple of weeks. And so yeah, that's kind of my draft. Let's see, out of the two, I'm looking at, I personally like my quarterback room better than yours, even though you do have Malik Willis, which earns you a lot of points. I like your running back room a lot more than mine, in my personal opinion. I love Kevin Harris, Devontae Tuggle, and Jarek Broussard as your top 3. I do like mine's still pretty good, I'd say. But wide receivers.
I would take my wide receiver room over yours, even though yours is a lot. I'd say yours is more top heavy than mine.
I would say, yeah.
Like I feel like mine's is a lot more balanced.
Your tight end room obviously has 2 of the best, probably 3 tight ends in the game, so I'm not going to knock you there. Yeah, I'd say overall, it definitely pays off for you to have that first overall pick. That definitely helps you a ton. But I'm trying to think here now. Yeah, I'd say yours is probably better than mine a little bit overall. But I'd say I would be confident with my roster going into a season. Like there's nothing here that I would say like, oh God, I'm terrified about this.
Yeah. I will say one more thing about the Jermaine Burton pick, and I'll shout out somebody that was in my draft to where it was at Alfred JF, and he's apparently, which I was as well, on the Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint train to where he may stand out even more than Burton. And I think the games that I saw, I definitely see the talent with Rosemy-Jack Saint, and he went down with a broken foot during the Florida game, so he's recovering. He's been recovering for that for some time, so I should expect to hear some things out of summer where he's hopefully on the field and getting some practice, but he'll definitely be on the field this fall. And,
yeah,
I think the talent is both comparable there, and Honestly, there may be a little fantasy battle there to where who's going to turn out. I mean, Jermaine Burton didn't have that great game against Mississippi State. Like,
Oh
he
yeah.
had 200 yards. There's no denying that. But I feel like if you would have gave Rosemead some more time and some more reps,
And not a torn apart foot.
yeah, not a torn apart foot. He definitely, and I will say this: he did break the foot on a touchdown play. So you got to give the kid credit. He got you points before the injury.
That is very, very true. And it's not often that we as Georgia fans can say, yeah, we'll be okay at wide receiver, even with injuries to Pickens and Burton. Like, I am shocked at how loaded we are at wide receiver this year. It's not something we can say very often. And so you're right that there probably will be kind of a split there in the Georgia wide receiver room, even if we're passing more, because we just have tons of talent there. So, but I would say Burton is your best pick to be that number one guy this upcoming year. So yeah, those are kind of our thoughts. Those are like what we did in our drafts and everything. And yeah, we had a great time, and hopefully we'll be not only participating in more drafts as the season goes along, but as soon as Fantrax gets their act together and reopens the leagues for next year and everything, we could probably run a few drafts ourselves. And if y'all want to get involved, hit us up on Twitter. You guys see our tags right down there. Our DMs are open. So if you guys want to get involved, just let us know. And with that, we'll go ahead and move on to a couple of transfer portal news that we want to talk about. One that we really want to talk about, and then two other ones that we're just going to kind of talk about just a little bit and then move on. So
It's time for transfer portal news.
all right, so I've cut this section down a lot. So last time we did transfer portal news, we went almost 30-40 minutes on it with 5 people, and so I've kind of cut it down to just 3. And heck, even here, one we're only going to really talk about at length. The other 2 I just thought were kind of interesting. I want to see what Xavier's thoughts on it, and then I'll kind of go over a few more that I thought were interesting, but we're not going to go in depth at all here. But the first one we just have to talk about. Xavier and I both loved this guy coming out of last year, and we were ready for him to kind of take over after Calvin Austin would leave Memphis this next year. And that's Tahj Washington transferring, surprisingly in my opinion, from Memphis, and is moving to Power 5 and is going to the USC Trojans. So Xavier, I'm going to go ahead and, I'll go ahead and read his stats from last year, and then I'll get your initial thoughts on this. So last year in 2020, he saw 65 targets for 43 receptions, 743 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So Xavier, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, he was a great receiver at Memphis. Definitely, it was definitely a little tier list of Memphis wide receivers where Calvin Austin was the standard with him and Brady White, but you could see that Tahj Washington was just emerging, and you would see his production go up, and then there would be games where he would show flashes of like, man, this dude in a year or so, he's going to take off to where he could easily get 1,000-yard season, and I still believe that today. But with this USC news, it kind of switches my opinion a little bit in terms of USC. Even though they are losing Amon-Ra St. Brown, which was a great receiver for them last year, they still have Brew McCoy and Drake London. Now, I'm not neither saying that Tahj Washington is worse or better than those players. It's just in terms of we don't know what Keaton Slovis is going to prefer. Like, we don't know the connection that him and Tahj Washington could have. We don't know if Tahj Washington is going to adjust this offense. We don't know if he will even like get as much playing time as we're expecting, because we know he has the talent to do it, but oftentimes it's all about fit. So I know Jared and me often say, like, yeah, you don't want to put like a square peg in a round hole. So we're hoping that it works out for Tahj at USC and they'll have a nice little trio. But from a fantasy perspective, I think he could still put up a serviceable number, and I feel like he would be more of a streaming option at this point now. But you never know. He could break out and overtake Drake and Brew. I think he has the talent to do so, because I was like, if you're getting Calvin Austin, then you definitely have something to offer.
So yeah, I was initially, when I first heard this news, I was like, oh no. Like, I was excited when I saw Tahj Washington leaving Memphis, or I wish I still saw him in Memphis, but when he first announced the transfer, I'm like, okay, like, if he goes somewhere that's like where he could be that clear wide receiver one, day one, I'd be like all over this man. I'd be like, this guy is going to break out this year. And when he went to USC, my immediate thoughts were Drake London, Brew McCoy, and several other talented receivers they have on that roster already. I'm like, However, I started doing a little bit more research. And I have to thank the folks over at Pro Football Focus for their enhanced stats that they provide for college athletics. And I saw some things that kind of opened my eyes to the fact that Tahj Washington can fit a role that this offense does not have at this moment, and that to me is a deep threat receiver. I went and looked last year at players like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I went and looked at players like Drake London. I went and looked at players like Brew McCoy. Every single one of them had over 40% of their targets were less than 10 yards down the field. Tahj Washington, while at Memphis, saw 48% of his targets come between 10 and 19 yards down the field. This man is stretching the field for his offenses, and he got three touchdowns out of those targets. This man clearly can kind of provide that new role in the USC offense. And I looked at him compared to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown is probably the closest I'd probably say in terms of where he could fit in this USC offense. And with him gone, I think Tahj Washington can easily fill in that left side kind of medium to deep threat receiver that the USC is not, or currently doesn't have as far as I can tell. Now, Drake London obviously could change that. Dude's very talented. Brew McCoy, all these guys very talented. However, I'm also wondering if this is a scheme thing where these wide receivers are expected to be targeted 0 to 10 yards down the field. In which case, if that's the case, Tahj Washington's a little bit in trouble here, because I'm looking at his short passes last year. He struggled in the short game. Last year, when he was targeted less than 10 yards down the field, he was given a grade of 59.8, a receiving grade, and a drop grade of 47.1 when he's targeted less than 10 yards down the field. So if USC is going to try to, like Xavier was kind of mentioned earlier, where you're taking him and trying to take this square and shove it into a round hole, it could spell trouble for Tahj Washington. But if they do play to his strengths and make him that kind of mid to deep threat receiver, you're looking at somebody that could easily take over as a wide receiver 1A, 1B, or even just the number one period. So I see a lot of potential here, but I also see a lot of room for just a major bust here. But late rounds, I think he's worth a draft.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. It's a boomer bust pick. You're either going to get great value really late, or you're just going to have to drop and pick somebody up off the waiver wire, which is not always that bad, because players emerge each season where we're just like, I did not expect this player to be this good this season. So if you're just on it, then you'll be able to do that quickly. If you're not, then oh well. But if Tahj Washington does pan out, your fantasy team, your wide receiver room just got a big upgrade.
Oh, yeah. So we'll go ahead and move on to the second one. That was kind of the big one we were really going to talk about. The second one I wanted to mention was the fact that Puka and Samson Nacua, I messed up here on the graphic. It says Washington to BYU, but Samson's actually transferring out of Utah to BYU. They're both going to BYU. So last year, Puka saw 9 receptions for 151 yards and 1 touchdown in 3 games for Washington, and it was the second most targets on his team on the Washington Huskies. Samson saw 4 receptions for 29 yards, 1 touchdown in 2 games. So basically, what I saw here with these two guys, when I took a look once again, Pro Football Focus, they have great stats. It's totally worth the price to kind of take a look at these stats. These guys are very much short to middle range guys on both of their teams. And while I think Puka is the more talented out of the two, and I think he's going to be getting a lot more work, I do think that adding these 2 short range options onto BYU is going to help whoever their quarterback is next year. Most likely it's going to be Baylor Romney is what I'm hearing. But I think having two more short range wide receivers is going to help in that offense. I don't know how well they'll do for fantasy options, And I do think it will actually end up hurting. Like I teased this earlier. I think it's going to end up hurting Isaac Rex more than it's going to help either of them. Because Isaac Rex is going to be your kind of short pass tight end that's going to get tons of targets in that short game. However, with these two guys coming in as short pass wide receivers, you'll probably see some targets taken away from Isaac Rex. So those are my thoughts on this. Xavier, what are your kind of thoughts here?
I think this definitely helps whoever's going to be the QB of BYU. You're obviously going from Zach Wilson to whoever else, and I don't think you can just automatically or just next man up Zach Wilson. That's going to be a once in a every couple of years type of player, or maybe a once in a generation type of player, depending on how well he does in the NFL. But I think that does give their wide receiver room a little bit more help because they are losing Dax Milne and Gunnar Romney as, another great receiver that they have, a great deep threat. But that's all they're going to have left. He wasn't a 1,000-yard receiver. He wasn't, the number one option, but definitely bolsters up that wide receiver room. If they can produce, then maybe Isaiah Rex will take a hit. But I do always say this, and I always tell Jared and other people this: when it comes to new quarterbacks, I've always noticed this: the tight end always becomes their best friend. It's like a safety net, to where the tight end will always be there for short passes. If you're not able to go through your reads and your progressions, the tight end will always be there. Like they'll either go from blocking to, hey, I'm still here, I'm open, hit me, I'll get something, or either nothing, but stuff. The tight end will make things work. So I think Isaac Rex is not in jeopardy per se, but if it starts to click with whoever the quarterback is, which I am also hearing it's going to be Romney as well. That might spell trouble for Isaiah Rex, but I think he still will be a top tight end. And I just think that maybe, in terms of his production, maybe he won't have the amount of yards or touchdowns he had previously, because it was just mainly him, Dax Milne, and Gunnar Romney, and Zach Wilson just finding the ball with anybody. But if you have a crowded receiving room, then that could spell trouble for your tight end, and they just may ask him to block.
Yeah, I'll be clear. Like, I'm not saying like this is going to destroy Isaac Rex's fantasy value. Like, dude was getting an insane amount of targets and touchdowns last year. Like, there's probably going to be at least some regression to the mean with Isaac Rex. Like, now, granted, he's a freshman, so maybe he gets even better and they target him even more. But again, to me, it's just not a red flag per se with this happening, but it's definitely it's a flag that's kind of waving at me and saying like, hey, you should at least think about this. So the last kind of transfer we're going to really talk about here is quarterback Jason Bean from North Texas transferring to Kansas. And so I liked Jason Bean, having him on my fantasy team last year. Dude was a ton of fun, and we'll get to why in a second because I'll read out his stats and everything. Problem with him was injury. Good God, injury. Him and Austin Owen, I think that's how you pronounce it, they were kind of going back and forth while at North Texas because of injury, because the coach just kept throwing Austin Owen in there every once in a while. And so I'll read out his stats from last year. He played in 8 games, and in those 8 games, his passing was 1,131 yards for 14 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. His completion percentage was 54.5%. His rushing, he had 56 attempts, 346 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So that's where the fun part of it came in, was that dude can use his leg. And to me, if you get a good coach in there to utilize his legs, dude can absolutely burn an entire defense. I think he could be a ton of fun, especially at a school like Kansas. However, we're also talking about Kansas. And you're talking about a pretty good downgrade in weapons, in my opinion, because last year you're looking at him having Jalen Darden as a go-to receiver. Jair Shorter was injured pretty early on, but he was a great receiver. Simpson was another receiver that they had out there. And then, Xavier, can you name a single receiver off of Kansas's depth chart right now?
Look, right now, no. But I will say, if you asked me a few months ago, I'd be like, Parchment was there before he went
True.
up to FSU.
That's
But
true.
besides
That's
that,
true.
I have no idea.
There was another one that was there, and he moved off to Northwestern. So I'm sure there'll be guys to emerge and everything. But now, name me the running back.
Oh God.
But this is my point. You can't even, you wouldn't be able to name anybody off of Kansas last year. Now, granted,
I would only say like the only running back I remember from Kansas is Puka Williams, and he's gone now, and I'm glad he's gone because oh God, past fantasy years nightmares for that man.
yeah, you got burned by him a couple of times, and So I'm excited. I'm cautiously optimistic about Jason Bean going to Kansas. I do think he is a upgrade at quarterback for them. Now, again, his passing isn't the greatest, but he does provide that kind of dual threat possibility for Kansas to play around with. And he could be somebody to keep your eye on. I just wanted to bring him up here because I liked him last year, and I'm excited to see him try his options out at the Power 5. Any other thoughts you would say here, Xavier, before we move on?
Nothing really. He's going from North Texas to Kansas. You're going to the Big 12. It could spell, you don't have to worry about I can't even say that anymore. You don't have to worry about defense in the Big 12 anymore. Things are definitely changing. So we'll see. But at least he's able to use his legs, and we'll see how that spells.
So before we move on from transfer portal news, there's a couple other transfers and notes I just wanted to mention here. Xavier, you can kind of hop in here and talk about a little bit of these guys if any of them strike your interest. Tyrell Pigrone, who was a starting quarterback last year at Western Kentucky, is transferring out of Western Kentucky, which kind of tells me that Bailey Zapp and that air raid offense that's being brought in will be enforced this upcoming year. Asher O'Hara, fantasy darling of 2 years ago, and also a little bit this past year, transferred out of MTSU and is going to the FCS. He is going to Sacramento State. So he will not be an option for this upcoming year. And then the last one I kind of wanted to mention was Christian Fitzpatrick, younger brother of Des Fitzpatrick, is transferring out of Louisville and is going to Michigan State. So any thoughts you want to mention there, Xavier, or you want to just go ahead and move on? Let's go to sleepers.
Yeah, I'll just touch on the Fitzpatrick transfer. I just hope Michigan State can find it was just they just need to find a QB because I never know if it's going to be Lombardi, the other guy. It's just so inconsistent. I feel so bad for Mel Tucker because I know he turned that Colorado program sort of around and got them on a stable place in the Pac-12. He was great defensive coordinator at Georgia and Michigan State. He has had some pretty significant upsets too. So I was like, he's definitely a good coach for that program. I just think he just needs to find a good solid foundation at QB. So hopefully they address that in recruiting this past year, or maybe Lombardi takes that next step and can.
Well, Lombardi transferred out. He transferred to Northern Illinois. Peyton Thorne took over in the latter half of the season, and he provided an upgrade. Nothing special, I'd say. Yeah. But they also got the transfer starting quarterback from Temple, Anthony Russo, there to kind of push him and maybe push for that starting role. So it looks like they're going to have at least some sort of quarterback competition there, and hopefully that brings some good out of it. So shall we get to sleepers, Xavier?
Oh, yeah.
So let's get on with it. So Xavier and I have both picked out two... or not two, what am I saying? Good Lord, numbers. Can never get them straight. So Xavier and I picked out 5 sleepers each that we want to talk about. A couple of things here to kind of qualify what we're thinking is a sleeper. So there's been several mock drafts done already, and pretty much it's a little subjective, but basically if Xavier and I thought that these guys were going undrafted way too often, especially in some of these kind of deeper leagues that are going 16, 20 rounds. We're amazed that some of these guys can get to the end of a draft and they're still there. They're still they're just waiver wire picks waiting for you to pick up. I kind of went with the I didn't pick anybody out of my draft that I took part in. And I think Xavier did the same thing where he didn't pick anybody that was in his draft.
Yeah,
I think those are the main qualifications. So basically, overall, we're looking at guys we think are just going way too late. Xavier, you got any other things to add here? Any other qualifications?
I just didn't pick anybody from my draft, and I kind of changed my definition of sleeper a little bit to where I just felt like I felt like everybody made great choices in my draft to where I feel like players were picked and there was not a player that was not supposed to just be drafted. Like, why would you make that pick? Like, I would have never even considered drafting or anything like that. I just define it as players that were left out that if there were, maybe another team or two, I felt that could have been drafted or it could have
Fair
used
enough.
So that's kind of how the standards I was looking at it from.
Yeah, we're also
in deep leagues, things are going to happen where you're going to have to really find talent in small places.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think another thing we have to put out here is that these are guys we think have high upside. Like you're talking about guys that you could probably pick up late in your drafts because, again, clearly their ADP is pretty far down. And these could be potential starters for you in your fantasy leagues. So with all those qualifications out of the way, we'll just go ahead and get started with my first one. So one other thing very briefly is that the one rule is that we couldn't have more than 3 players from the same position. That's kind of our thing, but I just want to point that out there. So if you're thinking like, oh, why did you not mention this guy? It's like, well, I already had 3 wide receivers. I didn't really apply here. I'm not sure why I told you guys that, but that was kind of our rule. So first one, Marcel Barbie. That is a name last year I kept an eye on. And I am shocked that in 2 out of the 4 leagues or 2 out of the 4 mock drafts that have been done so far, he has gone undrafted. And in another draft, he was taken, I believe, in like the last 3 rounds. And then the other draft, he went probably where I would have drafted him. I think it was like the 9th round or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. However, I'm still just shocked that he's falling this far in so many drafts. You're talking about a guy that, in terms of fantasy value, could be compared to, and Xavier, you're going to probably gonna tell me to stop it here, but could be comparable to Terrence Marshall Jr. And here's my backup on that. So, Marcel Barbie saw 25% of his targets last year go for 20 plus yards downfield. From that, he got 3 touchdowns off 6 receptions. He had 18 targets downfield. And that was not like the fact that he only had 6 receptions out of 18 targets was not his fault because PFF gave him only a 79.3 drop grade. So clearly it was either just off target and stuff like that. It wasn't totally his fault. And he got 10 total touchdowns last year. He got 40 receptions and 65 so he got 10 total touchdowns. Let's compare this to Terrence Marshall Jr. Terrence Marshall Jr. in his games last year saw 67 targets. Compare that to Marcel Barbie's 71 targets. In deep balls, which are 20 plus yards down the field, he saw 8 targets compared to Marcel Barbie's 18. He had 6 receptions compared to Marcel Barbie's 6 receptions, 3 touchdowns for Marcel Barbie. He had a 77.5 drop grade compared to Marcel Barbie's 79.3. And he too got 10 total touchdowns on the year. Now the big difference here is that Terrence Marshall played in a few less games, so I'll say that. I will say that. However, this is with Marcel Barbie. He was number 1 receiver last year on Texas State. However, 40 receptions and 65 targets have been vacated from this past year because of the number 2 receiver, Jeremiah Haydell, leaving the team and going off to the draft. And so you're looking at a guy who's probably going to be earning even more targets downfield, and you're going to be looking at a guy who can get massive chunk plays in a good chunk of the targets he receives per game. So yeah, that's kind of my case for Xavier. Like, is anything you're seeing here that's kind of you're kind of poking holes in it, or?
No, I've seen that comparison made, and based on stats and facts that you presented, I don't think it's out of the question considering that the next receiver is gone. And but I will say this though. Well, actually, because the school he attends Texas State. If I don't,
Yes, sir.
Okay, so and the quarterback there is still there from this past season.
Yes, that was going to be something, like, if you didn't bring it up, was going to be one of my detractors, and that's the inconsistent QB play that he saw last year with Brady McBride and Tyler Hill. Or no, it's not Tyler Hill, Tyler Vitt.
Yeah, because I was going to say the only thing is that while he doesn't get like 100-yard games because he didn't get one this past season.
He did not. That was another thing I was going to say. He had 0 100-yard games last year.
But he was so close, like so many games. Like there were 77-yard games, 66, 69, 80-something. Like it didn't matter. So he's definitely going to see an increase in his production. I definitely see an increase in his future. So I don't blame it.
Mm-hmm. So, yep, you kind of brought up the things that I was going to point out as detractors. The fact that he didn't have a 100-yard game. The inconsistent QB play is clearly a step down from what Terrence Marshall would have seen at LSU with Miles Brennan or Max Johnson. The one last detractor I had is the fact that they do have a pair of solid running backs there in Calvin Hill and Brock Sturgis, who both are receiving backs and can take away in that passing game, as well as the fact that if they get going, Texas State has been known to just shut down the passing game and just let those two run. So those are kind of my main detractors. I got nothing else for Marcel Barbie. He's my number one sleeper here. He's the guy that I'm like, how in the world is he going? Is he not even getting drafted in some of these leagues? So we'll move on to your first sleeper. I'll let you introduce him. This is one of my boys too, but I'll let you have him.
James Cook. I'm going to make this comp this year because I've seen a lot of hype around this player.
I'll just point out real quick, James Cook is a running back from Georgia.
Yeah, the running back from Georgia, but I might as well just call him a Swiss Army knife because the man can do it all. A lot of people are hyping up, and as they should, Jaquarius Marks out of Mississippi State, to where, he's a great runner, gets a lot of yards, and he can catch out of the backfield or can play on the slot and receive. James Cook can basically do the same thing Jaquarius Marks can do. It's that Georgia just has a great room of talent at the running back position and the wide receiver position. But I will say this as a caveat to where James Cook is going into, I believe this is his he might be coming back for a 5th year, or either he'll be going to his senior season this next
junior
season.
year, I believe. I believe this is his junior year.
So he'll be going into his senior season. So Kirby, he already has familiarity.
No. This is his upcoming season is his junior year.
Okay. So oh man. So he's already he's the brother of Dalvin Cook. So he's in the offseason, he's working with his brother. And also he's been learning the Monken system. And if you just take a look at that Missouri game where he caught a bomb for like 80-something yards, it just shows you the talent that he has. That was
the Alabama game that
was the Alabama game. Wow. Oh, man.
Yeah. He did have, again, this is something I pointed out to Xavier. I was playing a little trivia with him, and I asked him who had Georgia's longest receiving touchdown last year. And I think Xavier went through every wide receiver we had before he finally settled on James Cook. And I said, yeah, James Cook, 82-yard touchdown against Bama.
Yeah. So I think with Kirby's familiarity with them, because Kirby always does this every year with the running backs that he's familiar with and that have like precedent over all the new guys coming in. So, man, I can't even name you our freshman running back coming in, but Lavicia Carroll and then Dejon Edwards and Kendall Milton last year, they saw some time on the field, but it's mainly going to be Zamir, Kendall, Kenny, and James Cook. But James Cook is starting to find a role to where at first it seemed like he was just too short to run between the trenches. And then sometimes we knew that he had the speed to play in the slot. Jarrett was definitely a big fan of this in the beginning. I was just like, I think we're just using him wrong. Maybe we should be passing out of the backfield. But this past season, I saw flashes of like what we could really be using as. And I think this could be a Jaquarius Marks type player later round. Now, you might not get the same production because Georgia has all that talent compared to Mississippi State, but you're still finding great value. In certain games, James Cook can go off for well over 100 yards from scrimmage, and he has done that multiple times where he'll get 80 yards rushing, but still 30 yards receiving off of 2 receptions. So
Oh yeah. I would personally say that if you're in a PPR league, James Cook is absolutely worth a look as a receiving back.
yeah,
So yeah, I agree with almost everything Xavier said. Clearly, I'm a Georgia fan too. I know James Cook, and I've been waiting for him to have a breakout season. And I think he's very, very possibly you're going to be looking and seeing him have that this upcoming year, not just as a running back, but as a receiving threat on the Georgia offense. So I guess you got anything else you want to add there before we move on to my next guy? All right. So my next guy is another wide receiver. This is my second wide receiver I'm talking about today. And it's a Florida wide receiver. And I've seen in other drafts, I've seen Justin Shorter taken, and I have seen Xavier Henderson taken. Like clearly some guys with high upside, very talented. Clearly people are looking for that next Florida wide receiver that they can count on. Last year, like they had Kadarius Toney, they had Trayvon Grimes, they had Kyle Pitts last year. Like you had 3 guys there, all 3 gone. To me, there's a clear next guy up, and I'm shocked that people just don't see it, and that's Jacob Copeland. Jacob Copeland last year was the number 4 target on that Florida offense. And people, I think, forgot about him because he wasn't there during the bowl game because of COVID reasons. Because you saw Kadarius Toney gone. You saw Kadarius Toney gone. You had Kyle Pitts gone. You had Trayvon Grimes gone. But let's take a look at all the things that were left open because of that. Targets vacated because of those 3 being gone. 208 targets are now open. 437 passing attempts on that offense are now open. 151 receptions now open. Or like you're talking about a ton of opportunity for a guy like Jacob Copeland, who was a clear number 4. Like it wasn't close after that. Jacob Copeland was the number 4 wide receiver on that offense and can clearly move up to that number 1 spot in my opinion. Like you're talking about a dude that had if you're talking about a wide receiver just built in a lab. Like if you could build a wide receiver in a lab, measurables and everything, you're looking at Jacob Copeland. This dude is built to be a wide receiver. And to me, even with the doubt that can come out of Emory Jones and everything, I think you're going to see Jacob Copeland take over as that wide receiver 1 this upcoming year and have a grand year. So those are kind of my thoughts on Jacob Copeland. Again, I kind of mentioned here, the main detractors I'm seeing here is the fact that you could have a younger wide receiver just blow up, which is, it happens. And then obviously the quarterback play at Florida, people are a little skeptical about Emory Jones, talking about 52.9% completion percentage, 81 yards, 0 touchdowns in the bowl game. And then I'll have other people tell me like, oh no, Anthony Richards could take it over. And like, can we say that? Because Anthony Richards threw 2 passes last year. One was a touchdown in the bowl game. The other one was an interception. So we can't really, in my opinion, say anything about Anthony Richardson yet there. But I still think that Jacob Copeland, if you're looking for a wide receiver on Florida to go to, it has to be Jacob Copeland because he's the guy that is the established veteran. And if it weren't for Kadarius Toney, if it weren't for Trayvon Grimes, if it weren't for Kyle Pitts last year, you would have seen a lot more production out of Jacob Copeland. Xavier, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you. Even though I am one of those skeptics of Emory Jones and how he will play, I was really I was never down on him during the season. I obviously think he has talent, but it was just every time he got on the field, it was just like you always knew it was going to be a running play. So it just kind of just seems like, the next step is like maybe they'll just use him as a dual threat quarterback, but mostly just his legs. So we don't know what Jacob Copeland can look like. We've seen Emory Jones throw the ball a few times. There are some question marks there. We'll see. I know that a lot of people were high on Xavier Henderson coming in because he was a 5-star, I believe, 4 or 5-star wide receiver.
High 4-star, if I remember correctly.
Receiver, and people were just raving about him. And he didn't have a terrible freshman campaign this past season. He just had a pretty average where a couple of 20, 40, 30, 60-yard games. Nothing to stand out, but if it is possible that, Xavier Henderson could step out and be that number 1 if it turns out to be that way. But for the safe bet, it definitely is Copeland. Like you said, there's a lot of targets available, and even if it's not going to be like Copeland's not going to take. I mean, nobody's going to take 150 targets and all like 100%.
Oh, of course not.
If Copeland can just take, I don't know, 40, 30% of that, that's on top of the stuff that on top of the targets that he had this past season.
He had 40 targets, I believe, this past year.
Yeah, so if you're giving him close to 60, 70 targets, that could help your wide receiver room a lot.
Yep, I would agree. So I guess we'll go ahead and move on to your second guy. Who you got here? Oh, look at that. To his little brother.
We'll go with the little brother, Talia Tagovailoa at Maryland. He showed. I'm mainly going based off of this one game. I don't expect people to draft him, but it wouldn't surprise me if somebody did. And I think he definitely has shown the talent to be a starting quarterback at Maryland. And I think a lot of people have even identified his number one receiver with Raheem Jarrett. And there's a good connection there. And I think for his freshman campaign and him transferring from Bama and going into a whole new program, Big Ten, I think he's just primed and ready to take that next step. And I'm not saying he's going to be, one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten or anything like that, but I think he could be very serviceable for your team if you're just late in a draft and you have 3 or maybe you want an extra quarterback and some more points. I think Talia Tagovailoa definitely has the skill set and the personnel to help out your team a little bit.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you pretty much wholeheartedly. My thing with Talia is, while I like him like as a person and everything. I love Tua and him as well. I do think he is pretty boom or bust in terms of when he's on, he's on. Like you were talking about, he had that one game. I can't remember which game it was off the top of my head last year, but he did have one game where he went off and very clearly established that the ceiling is for him to get 35 plus fantasy points in a game if things are going well. And I think with a full off season to connect with his receivers, connect with that offense, he absolutely can reach that point. However, you got a lot of games where once things were kind of going wrong, things went really wrong for Talia. And you saw him throw interception after interception, fumble after fumble. And it's just not something I would personally want to subscribe to if I was desperate in a league. Like if, say I waited too long on a quarterback in a draft and I'm like, oh God, I don't have my second starting quarterback. I'm not going to be looking to Talia Tagovailoa because he's going to be a guy that could really screw up my entire fantasy week, because he can get 35 plus points in a week, but he can also get 2. And so, especially if you count interceptions and fumbles and any other turnovers against him and everything. So, yeah, I'd say I understand where you're coming from. I agree with you wholeheartedly that if things connect this year with Mike Locksley, Raheem Jarrett, and everything at Maryland, you're looking at probably one of the best fantasy quarterbacks in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I will say this. Besides his Northwestern game, every other game, because Maryland only played 4 games. Well, he only played 4 games, but I believe only played 4 games because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
He threw well over 200 yards for the 3 games, and that was a win against Penn State and Minnesota. And I think the Minnesota game is the one that everybody remembers, where he threw almost close to 400 yards. Mm-hmm. And he definitely showed to where he can use. There were times where he dropped back too much and got sacked and fumbled the ball, but there were games where he did get positive yardage in his rushing games, where he would run for 8 times, get 59 yards. At the other time, he would get like 13. But he definitely has the skill set, I believe.
How many interceptions did he throw last year?
Last year, he threw 7 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. So, yeah, it was tough.
Again, hopefully that's a little better for him this year with a full season and everything.
Full season, full spring. I think that it'll definitely pan out in his favor.
Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to my third guy, unless you got any last things you want to talk about, Talia. Nope. All right. So my third guy, Raymond Davis. Raymond was I will admit was a little bit of a disappointment for me last year when I drafted him from Temple, because dude went off in the bowl game against North Carolina. They got destroyed that game, But the bright spot for Temple was the fact that I think Raymond Davis got like 3 touchdowns that game or something like that. Like, dude was like the lone bright spot on the entire offense, and the future was very bright for him. However, last year comes along. He's doing well. He's got a touchdown, but he's not quite, or he's doing well in yards, has 1 touchdown, isn't quite doing well, and then injury strikes, COVID strikes, and suddenly he's just not finding the play in time that he used to be getting. And so he seems to have just packed up his stuff and realized his talent and said, hey, I can go to a Power 5 team. Barely. He went to Vanderbilt. So a couple of things I do want to mention here. 2020 stats for Raymond Davis. He did, like I said, he had 78 attempts, 308 yards, which is good for about 3.9 to 4 yards per carry, 1 touchdown and 12 receptions. So again, he had a all right year, but again, his season ended kind of early. So he transferred to Vanderbilt from Temple. And a couple of things I wanted to note here that I thought were kind of interesting. First of all, watching him on tape, dude has incredible vision. His eyes are always downfield, and he can very much read a defense as it's as all the pieces are moving. He can find a pathway through people in order to get more yards, and I think that's pretty incredible. Another thing I wanted to mention here was that, first of all, Vanderbilt is very good about finding their one running back that they're going to give 150 plus carries per season. I look back and I could not find an end as to when Vanderbilt had a starting running back that was less than 150 carries. So if Raymond Davis gets that starting job, you know you're going to get the volume from him. And you could probably, I think the highest I saw for a Vanderbilt running back in the past 5 years, like 250 carries in a single season, which is a lot, clearly. Not only that, Vanderbilt under Derek Mason ran on 63% of their plays. Well, Derek Mason's now gone, and you had Clark Lee from Notre Dame coming in, who is coming from a system that ran the ball 68% of the time. So you're talking about a coach, first of all, a defensive coach, who is more likely to be wanting to establish that run game in order to protect his defense. So again, if Raymond Davis becomes that starting running back here at Vanderbilt, I think you're going to get tons of volume, tons of opportunity for him to kind of show out in this offense. And the last thing I kind of wanted to point out here was that the starting running back from last year, Keon Henry Brooks, we talked about him a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about transfer portal, he transferred out, which to me kind of points to, first of all, I think Keon Henry Brooks is a talented running back, and I think he should be looking for other opportunities to play at a little bit higher level. But it also kind of speaks to me that Raymond Davis may have possibly kind of pushed him out a little bit. Raymond Davis could be kind of taking over that starting job there. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on Raymond Davis. Dude's a hard worker. I actually follow him on Twitter. I saw a couple of his tweets come by. Dude's a very hard worker. Dude clearly loves his team. Is doing everything he can to win that starting job. And I think if he does, he's going to play his heart out. And you're looking at a guy that could easily provide you just a good, consistent option for you every single week. So Xavier, what are you thinking here?
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. I guess the only discrepancy I would be it's kind of Vandy. So
yeah, I know. But also, again, I went back and looked at Vanderbilt's offenses the past couple of years, and usually their one bright spot is they have at least one running back that they just kind of shove into the offensive line 150 to 250 times a year, who can get you a lot of options.
2 years back, they had that really great one.
Keyshawn Vaughn,
great running back. But I will say, I mean, years of time has passed, and this past year, their O-line has not looked the greatest, to where I think top tier teams just look forward to playing Vandy because they're just like, I'm gonna stat pad. So
yeah, I understand. Yeah, again, I have my detractors written down. Literally, first one is it's Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
The second one is the fact that there's a couple camp notes that Javion Marlowe, who was the number 2 running back last year, is pushing for that starting job. There is a legit competition to take over for that starting job this upcoming season. So he is also another potential breakout here. I could probably have him on the sleepers. I think both of them should be kind of right next to each other in terms of wherever your ranking is. So, yeah. because either one of them could break out and become that number one running back. But I went with Raymond Davis because, again, I follow him on Twitter. He's a great guy. I believe in him. Also, I've seen him do it at Temple, and I think he could easily do it for a Power 5 team in Vanderbilt. So we'll go ahead and move on to your third sleeper. All yours.
Yeah, so I chose Devin Williams. What can I say about Devin Williams?
Wide receiver out of Oregon.
Yeah, wide receiver out of Oregon. Basically, I looked him up and I was like, well, Tyler Shough is gone, and I was thinking about doing Ty Thomas, the quarterback, coming in, because I understand that there's a QB battle between him and the current QB there. His name eludes me. As
Anthony Brown.
But Devin Williams seems to be that next guy, that next wide receiver at Oregon, to where a lot of people thought this past season or years before that it was going to be John Johnson, or basically Johnny Johnson III, to break out and be that number one wide receiver at Oregon. But this past season, he really wasn't that. And their two top guys are leaving for either they're graduating and they're not coming back, or either going off eligible for the draft. So there are a lot of targets to be open, and Devin Williams had 2 100-yard games this past season, had 2 touchdowns, 15 receptions, 286 yards. So he's averaging 19 yards per reception.
Wow.
I'm just like, if you're taking over,
how many receptions is that?
Hmm?
How many receptions was that based off of? Do you know off the top of your head?
15 receptions.
Wow, that's a pretty decent size.
So, dude, the guy has talent, and I believe that he'll be Oregon's number one.
Especially if you can establish a connection.
Freshman they have coming in, but it just seems like he's a sophomore. He has the size. He's 6'5", 205 pounds. So so he definitely, and he's obviously showed it. It was in the UCLA game and the Oregon State game. Even 2 close games. The UCLA game they obviously won. The Oregon State game they obviously lost by a nail biter. But he definitely has the amount of talent this guy has, and the amount of opportunities he should have this upcoming season, because Mario Cristobal is not just going to let Oregon, fall by the wayside and let Arizona State and USC come up in the Pac-12 and he, just regress. So I believe that Devin Williams, everybody's thinking that maybe CJ Verdell and Oregon might run the ball a lot more. I'll say this about CJ Verdell. I feel like he always sells you a good story in the beginning and be like, all right, towards the end of the season, he started playing well. And everybody's like, all right, maybe this will be the year he breaks out. And then there's games where he just doesn't do anything. So I don't think I'm going to fall for the trap this year, but I have been wrong before about players.
It doesn't seem like anybody else is either. As far as I can tell, I haven't seen anybody draft him in any of the mocks we've put up. Oh, somebody draft him in yours, you said?
Yeah. It was pretty late though, but I was just like, I'm not falling for that trap again. I've been wrong before where I thought a player was just not good enough to take that next level, or be any better after seeing them for maybe a season or a season and a half, but they just explode and have a Heisman campaign.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah. Mr. Joe Burrow doubter over there.
Oh God,
I'm not letting that one go. You reminded me of that.
I legit thought, I was like, after seeing him at Ohio State, cut it out, and you couldn't beat out Dwayne Haskins, you couldn't beat out JT, you couldn't do anything. Then you get to LSU in your first season, it wasn't great. So I was like, what made you think that I would believe in you your second season at LSU? And to have the season that he had, I ate crow the entire season. I was just wait. I felt so bad because I was one of those people just waiting for the downfall. I was like, there's no way he can keep this up. There's no way. And he just keeps on doing it. And I just eventually had to come to terms, and I was like, Joe Burrow's going to be a great NFL quarterback. And it looks like he will be. Hopefully he comes back completely healthy, because dude has a high ceiling.
Oh, yeah. To speak on Devin Williams a little bit more, we got a little sidetracked there, which is fine. Like, I always love ribbing Xavier a little bit for his dumb pass mistakes. I'm sure he'll do it to me in the future as well. God knows I've said dumb things. Devin Williams, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Senior wide receiver, definitely can establish himself as that wide receiver one on that offense. Ty Thompson, of course. I think if he's the starting quarterback, you're going to see an even higher ceiling for somebody like Devin Williams. There's a couple of you were right to kind of mention there's a couple of freshmen coming in that I think that people do need to keep their eye on. Troy Franklin is one of them. I can't remember the other one off the top of my head, but there's a couple of 4-star wide receivers they got coming in who I think could easily establish a good connection there. So might be a little worrisome for Devin Williams there, but overall I think you're right to kind of point at Devin Williams to say this could be a guy to establish as a wide receiver one on a great offense. So if you got nothing else to say, I'll go ahead and move on to my fourth guy.
Okay.
Sounds good. So I went gutsy here. So I had 2 wide receivers and 1 running back. I'm going 2 tight ends to finish out here. Tight ends deep this year. Like, I really am shocked by just the great value you can still get at tight end. And there's a couple here that I do want to point out that I'm surprised I haven't seen anybody go after. Actually, the second guy I'll talk about here in a second, I did actually see he went in one of the drafts. So I'm breaking my rules a little bit here. But Cade Otton, I'm not seeing go in any drafts here, and I want to point out why I think that's kind of crazy. So he played in 4 games last year. He had 18 receptions for 258 yards, 3 touchdowns, and would average for 14.3 yards per reception. And again, doesn't sound like much until you realize that he was the number 1 receiver on Washington's offense last year, which is crazy. To me, like, you never see that a tight end be that number 1 receiver on an offense. Like, maybe if you have Kyle Pitts or something like that, but even Kyle Pitts, I don't think even if he went the full year was still be that number one target. Actually, now I'm thinking about it. Iowa a couple years ago with T.J. Hawkinson and Noah Fant probably had wide receiver. Probably had. You know what? That's probably not much of a point. But anyway, so it's crazy. You don't see that very often.
But
and
those two tight ends were high fantasy value.
Oh yeah. But even so, along with him being the number 1 wide receiver, Washington's seen 4 wide receivers transfer this offseason, including, we mentioned earlier, Puka Nacua, who is their number 2 target, and then Ty Jones, who is their number 3 target, and then Marquise Spiker and Austin Bourne, 2 4-star receivers from this past year. They didn't see the field much, but they're now gone, so that upside's gone. It's like you're talking about somebody who not only was already the number 1 receiver, but is now probably the biggest veteran in terms of the receiving core that team has. And we're not talking about like Oregon State here. We're not talking about like some CUSA team. We're talking about Washington, who was supposed to play for the Pac-12 championship last year and went to the playoffs 4 years ago. Like, you're talking about a team that they're not just some speck on the map. Like, you're talking about a legit team. And all of a sudden, Cade Otton's kind of the last man standing in terms of receiving veteranship on that team. So I don't understand why people aren't like taking a shot on this guy. Like, if he's this big, if he's clearly that number 1 guy coming back, I'm just shocked that people aren't taking a shot on him. So yeah, what are your thoughts, Xavier?
I would only question because I was hearing some things about is Washington in the midst of a QB battle, or did they lose their QB to eligibility?
So QB battle is, I would say, okay. So what's his name from this past year? Dylan Morris. Dylan Morris was the starting QB at Washington this past year. He is still he's still on campus. Patrick O'Brien is a starting quarterback from Colorado State who transferred into Washington. And then Washington also has Sam Heward, a 5-star quarterback, coming in as a freshman. And the expectation is that Sam Heward definitely will push Dylan Morris for that starting job. And so, yeah. So I think that's the quarterback battle that you were kind of talking about there. So
Yeah, because I'm looking at Dylan Morris. He threw 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions and played 4 games, if I'm not mistaken. Like you
Yes,
said.
sir.
So, which 3 interceptions in 4 games is not the greatest. So if you do have that 5-star coming in, that's gonna push him to be a little bit better, or that 5-star takes over. That's great. But if Otton's the number one, like your number one option, and
Well,
I mean,
you said it earlier in the podcast. New quarterback, tight end's your best friend.
you're not wrong. And I mean, I'm looking at it now to where Washington, it wasn't that many like more receptions. It was just like he had 18 receptions. The next highest was like 9, so it just doubled that. But everybody else, it just felt like they were just running the ball more often. That's definitely what it was. They ran the ball more often than they passed. But for him to be the number one receiver, if that's the only time you're really passing is to the tight end, that's a lot of high value there. So I like the pick that you made for definitely a sleeper, definitely a tight end I definitely want to put on my board as well now, just in case that if I'm in one of those drafts and I'm like, man, if I feel like I could wait on a tight end, especially for like somebody like a K. Dotton, if I really believe in his upside, if I buy into the hype and he pans out, that's a good guy to where I would say you could take a play, like if you're on a tight end turn and you're just like, maybe I'm not ready to just jump on the bandwagon of the turn. I want to get another running back, or maybe I want to get another wide receiver that will probably be gone the next round. I could wait on a K. Dotton for a last pick or a second to last pick.
I got you.
So
I definitely got you.
Tight ends are deep this year.
Oh yeah, and yeah, that's probably part of the. I imagine in most other years, K. Dotton would absolutely be on people's radar. It's just, you're right, tight end's so deep this year. Like, I've never had a list as long as I do this year in terms of tight ends I would legitimately like having on my team. And I'm not a tight end guy.
Yeah.
For the most part. Except for this year. This year I like them. Because they're actually fun to research this year. Yeah. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on to your 4th guy. I'll let you take over.
There we go. Sean Tucker out of Syracuse. I feel like we're in another little Vanderbilt situation because it's Syracuse. Syracuse is not the greatest team in the world, especially in the ACC. Especially in that.
Except when they play Clemson for some reason.
Yeah, except when they play Clemson, they just find a way. It's something to do with the orange. It's just the class of orange, the orange color. But Sean Tucker is a great serviceable running back. I will say this. I think only
he's a wide receiver. Or no, you're right. My bad. You're right. I got you two guys confused. My bad.
Yeah, Sean Tucker definitely when he gets over 20 carries a game, he's definitely a serviceable back to where he'll get you 100 yards and a touchdown or 2. But anytime he gets under, that's when things start to get a little bit sketchy. To where you're just like, maybe I wouldn't draft him, but I'm like, if you're just in desperate need at the end of a draft, I think Sean Tucker is probably your best bet in terms of if everybody's just off the board and you need something, because he had over 600 yards this past season and 4 touchdowns, which is not the great, but considering that he is just a freshman, and
I did not know that.
I would hope and expect it can only go better from here. So, and he's taking a lot of the attempts because he had over 137 as a freshman. So,
all right,
Syracuse is not the greatest team in terms of like they'll find quarterbacks where they have Culpepper and then they have the other guy in there, and they'll find they'll have their number one receiver, which hint may be on this list, but Sean Tucker is basically their safety net, so where when things can't get going, they just give him the ball and let him run. And ball and running, he's just picking up yards. There are a few bad games that I've seen, but for the most part, he had three 100-yard games, and all those games, well, all but one game he didn't score, but still, that's still a serviceable amount of points, and I can only expect him to be better.
Yeah, and one other thing I do want to point out here is with Syracuse, they just got Garrett Schrader, a transfer from Mississippi State. You probably remember him from when he turned into a helicopter at the end of one of the games. He's transferred over to Syracuse, and he was injured last year. That's why he couldn't play. However, he's expected to push Tommy DeVito for that starting quarterback job. And if you know anything about Garrett Schrader, the guy can use his legs. And if Syracuse can find a way to utilize his running ability, I think it can absolutely open up some more running lanes for Sean Tucker. If you have kind of those pass off options where the defense has to look, is Schrader going to run the ball or is Tucker going to run the ball? And obviously they can't probably cover both those guys at once. So I think that's another good. And the fact that, again, you mentioned he's a freshman, I think that just points to the upside that could happen with this team. And like we were joking about Syracuse, like having a rough past couple of years and everything, but it wasn't long ago they were playing West Virginia in the Alamo Bowl after like a 9-win season. Like they weren't a bad team not too long ago. So clearly, like there's a coaching staff there that can absolutely, when they get things clicking, can get an offense going, can get a defense going enough to where they can win lots of games. And if you're winning lots of games, you're more than likely running the ball well. And so Sean Tucker, there he is.
Yeah,
So.
3 more years of him, hopefully, and then if barring that he doesn't explode and become a Heisman candidate or first round pick, then I'm just gonna claim and be like, I was the first. I would say everybody else.
That's why we're recording this. Like we have your face right there and everything. Yeah. You talking about it. This is all you, man. So yeah. That was a very interesting pick. I'm glad you brought that one kind of my attention. I hadn't really heard of Sean Tucker too much before you kind of added him to my list. I looked him up a little bit before this and provided very good reason for me to want to possibly draft him as a sleeper in future league or in future mocks. So we'll go with my fifth and last. I went with another tight end here, and this guy was drafted in the 4th mock that was recently released by Mike Bainbridge, but I still want to talk about him, and that's Derek D. Oops. My bad, give me 1 second. I just knocked over my entire microphone. All right, we're good. We're going to talk about Derek Deese here. And so last year, he played in 8 games, had 20 receptions, 240 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Which doesn't sound like a lot, especially for playing 8 games, because you're looking at that's like 2.5 receptions per game. So like you're not talking about a huge volume guy. However, 58% of his targets came between 10 and 20 yards down the field. So clearly when he is getting those receptions, he's getting a good amount of yardage along with them. Most of those targets coming directly over the middle, pretty much. Last year, he was the 3rd most targeted receiver on his team. And the 2 ahead of him, Trey Walker and Bailey Gaither, are both off to the NFL or graduating. So now you have Derek Deese coming in as the number 1 receiver. Well, he's a tight end, but like the guy with the most receptions coming in from this past year. Now, granted, unless you're Washington for some reason, you're more than likely not going to have a tight end become your number 1 receiving option. Now you could, in which case Derek Deese is probably tight end 1 next year, because Nick Starkel worked wonders for San Jose State last year. They went and won the Mountain West because of him. And so, yeah, if Derek Deese takes on even larger of a role this upcoming year and is able to establish a good connection with Nick Starkel, I think you're looking at a option that can easily provide you week-to-week value for you in your fantasy. Again, kind of the only detractors I'm looking at here is just other wide receivers breaking out like Isaiah Hamilton and stuff like that. So what are your kind of thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. I feel bad now because I thought when I looked at Nick Starkel's profile, I was like, he's a senior, probably not coming back. I should have did more research, but apparently he is coming back.
He is coming back.
Another sleeper. And I guess that QB connection with him and Derek Deese Jr. would be great, because I feel like Starkel has solidified himself definitely as a serviceable quarterback and put up a lot of big numbers. There are some games where he is, not the greatest, but for the most part, they won the Mountain West, and Derek Deese, and with all the receivers gone, I would expect them at least, not per se to run it back because they are losing a lot, but, to sort of kind of replicate what they did this past year. And with Derek Deese maybe not leading the helm, but definitely in that rotation of one of the top 3 and leaders in the reception on that team. So.
Oh yeah. And again, I go back to the fact that almost 60% of his targets came greater than 10 yards down the field. Like, you're not talking about a guy that's just a dump off option. Like, you're talking about a guy that Starkel was looking for down the field. But yeah, like you said, you're right. I probably should have thought about Nick Starkel as probably a sleeper on this list and everything, because I'm shocked that he's not going in more leagues, because he clearly found a home at San Jose State. It didn't work out for him at Arkansas, which, nothing was working out with Chad Morris there. But like, I'm glad he found a home, and again, clearly found some people that he can find a connection with. And I think Derek Deese can absolutely be one of those guys next year. So we'll go ahead and move on to your final sleeper. Take it away.
Tahj Harrison. We're going back to the orange of Syracuse. I'm just going to say it straight. He's the only one getting receptions on this team. That's it. It's just him. He led the team with 58 receptions and got 773 yards.
What was the number two? Like, how many receptions?
Oh, dear God. It was actually 37, so it wasn't that bad. But after that, it's just a big drop off.
Mm-hmm. Who was the number two?
The number two is Anthony Quealy, the sophomore.
I haven't heard of that one. Interesting.
But Tahj Harrison's long was 79 yards. He had doubled everybody. The next two receivers, he still beat out in number of yards by adding their receiving yards together, so it just didn't matter. He's obviously that number one option. There's not even a debate. And he had 5 touchdowns, which isn't a lot considering the amount of games they played. But in a PPR league, he's going to be. He definitely deserves an honorable mention. Definitely a sleeper in a draft, especially for PPR, because he's getting an average of probably like 5 through 7 receptions a game, which is not unheard of for a receiver, but like sometimes you see receivers with like maybe 5 or 6 receptions for 100 yards. This dude is averaging that. So that's all I really have to say about Tahj Harris. It's like you said, quarterback DeVito, he's going to be battling out with transfer QB
Garrett Strader.
So we'll see how that works out. But I don't see his production going down because they need a reliable option, and he has the build for it. Maybe a little bit undersized weight-wise, but height, he's that tall, long option.
Oh, yeah. And we kind of mentioned it with Sean Tucker, where if the game script is in favor of Syracuse, where they are winning and they're running the ball more and everything, you'll see a high upside from Sean Tucker. However, if the game script's against them and they're losing the game, they're likely going to be passing more in order to catch up. And in which case, obviously, you're kind of mentioning Tahj Harris becomes that number one option. Clearly the guy that they kind of go to for if they need yards, they're going to go to him.
Yeah.
So can't really go wrong with either one of those guys as long as the game script's in your favor.
Yeah.
So those are our 10 sleepers that we kind of wanted to talk about there. I'll kind of mention a few more here. We're not going to really go in depth here on any of these guys, but a few more that I did want to just kind of throw out there I thought would be interesting to talk about, but didn't quite make my list. Quarterback Skylar Thompson out of Kansas State. If he can stay healthy, I think he'll be amazing. Jack Plummer out of Purdue, if he's the starting quarterback, or Adrian O'Connell. I can't really figure out which one of them is going to be the starting quarterback this year. Frank Harris, quarterback at UTSA. If he can be more consistent, he would be the best fantasy option we could ever have. Running backs, I wanted to mention Marquez Cooper, running back at Kent State. This is a fantastic offense. Noah Cain out of Penn State. However, I've seen him go in some drafts recently, so I couldn't really include him here. Wide receivers, Jason Brownlee from Southern Mississippi, Jack Sorensen out of Miami, Ohio, and then Kyron Lacey out of Louisiana Lafayette are some of the sleepers that I wanted to talk about, but they just didn't quite make my list here.
Yeah.
So, is there you guys any that you kind of want to talk about that you just want to mention real quick?
I'll give some shout outs to some freshmen that may pop off this year. Donovan Edwards, he was drafted in my draft, but definitely in a lot of other drafts I didn't see him get drafted at all. And with Michigan losing a lot of their running back room to transfers or just, losing eligibility. And from what I'm hearing out of camp, Donovan Edwards could be the next great Michigan back. So if he gets the production, which Michigan, we all know what Harbaugh is going to do with Michigan. It's not to be expected anything much, but if Donovan Edwards can get that production and get a lot of yards and a lot of carries and touchdowns, then that's all we're caring about. I don't care about if Michigan wins or loses as long as Donovan Edwards is eating, which it sounds like he probably will be soon.
Sounds good.
And did you want to mention something about him as well?
No, I think you kind of mentioned everything you needed to about Donovan Edwards there.
And then I was going to go with, I guess, one of the Alabama wide receivers, one of their many riches that they get to have. I was going to highlight Ja'Cory Brooks. I've heard great things about him. I don't know what to expect, but it's Alabama. Eventually, he's probably going to make his way up the depth chart and find his way.
Yeah, if you're in a Devy league, you have to get him.
And Slade Bolden. So, but you never know. It's always that one freshman wide receiver that you just
never see coming,
and then they just break out, and there you have another Devontae Smith.
Yep. So yeah, those are kind of our initial sleepers and everything. I'm sure we'll probably revisit this topic as the season goes on. ADP changes. You have different people get involved with different mock drafts and everything. Maybe us putting out this video causes a lot of these guys' ADP to jump up and get drafted. So now we got to look at new sleepers. And so yeah. We're definitely going to visit this topic in the future, and we thank you all for listening. We're about an hour and 45 minutes here. We went long again, but honestly, I have such a good time with this, and Xavier, I imagine, has a good time just talking about this kind of stuff. And if you guys are still here, obviously, you clearly love just listening, talking about this kind of stuff. We appreciate y'all doing all of that. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube, you like, subscribe, doing all that sort of stuff that makes us heard. Make sure that YouTube is recommending us to different people. If you're on Spotify, appreciate you listening throughout the whole thing. If you're on Apple Podcasts, again, I mentioned at the top of the show, leave 5-star or leave whatever review you want. But if you want to have your question answered on a future show, possibly, the best way to do that is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It's the best way to get us recommended there. I'm trying to think.
We'll answer.
Yeah, I would say, and
future shows are answered immediately, but either way.
Exactly. Yeah, follow us on Twitter. Again, you got both of our Twitters right down there. I'm probably the more active out of the two of us on Twitter in terms of responses, but you get a spicy enough question, Xavier will answer you.
Oh yeah, I'll answer you in 10 to 15 minutes.
So, trying to think anything else to add here. We haven't quite decided on a topic for the next round of shows, but I'm sure I'll be putting out hints and stuff like that on Twitter as to what we'll be talking about. But yeah, with all of that, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll try to be back again next week with another episode, and we'll see you guys then. Have a wonderful day, y'all.
Have a good one, guys.